Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back down the rabbit hole. My name is Monty Hook and I am your host. And today I'm joined by a very special guest, Mr. David Hansbacher. Thank you so much for coming in,
Pleasure,
man.
Monty.
I've been excited to bring you in. You are a successful entrepreneur. You're the founder of Istana and Yogi Lab in Bali, and you're very passionate, especially about bringing education of meditation. Meditation is probably what you're known for. And what I really love about you is that you seem to be very grounded in your entrepreneurship.
Oh, thank you very much.
But you meditate for like 4 hours a day, and sometimes you've gone to extremes and you explored monkhood. So you've really gone to those polar extremes of exploring that spiritual world, but you've managed to ground yourself and kind of bring that world into real entrepreneurialism and kind of ground yourself there. And you seem to have this really unique balance and dynamic nature of how you've merged those worlds together. Does that sound fair?
That sounds wonderful. That's a great introduction. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm really surprised that that's not the norm. Because to me, meditation, when you go deep into it, is just getting closer to reality. So what better to ground you than getting closer to reality?
Yeah.
Right. And then everything you learn there, you can apply to everything.
So what are you known for? What would people know you for? Here's an insight. When I was kind of, one thing I like to do is I like to have a little bit of preparation. This is a free-flowing jam, but I like to feel like I'm prepared. So I did a little bit of research about you online. I checked out your Instagram. And what I love about you is you're not one of these guys who has to be like, you're not trying to be anybody. You're not showing yourself, hey, look at who I am, right? It's kind of like you let your successes speak for themselves, and you're not trying to prove anything to anybody, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I feel one of the best things you can do for yourself is just be comfortable with who you are, because everything starts with authenticity. So to me, I would never do anything that's not authentically me. It doesn't matter if it's going to get me followers or not. And the reason for the lack of an online presence is because when I came back from living like a monk, I went into the business world without going online. So the online world isn't something I was really interested in, except for to consult with other people about. So when I started to make money with like strategy consultancy and with, what was I doing? I was doing online trading back in the day. I wanted to know that I could sit alone in a room and make enough money to make my family rich.
Yeah.
So that I didn't need anything. So then anything I did after that was just extra. And I thought, let me put some of these techniques and skills I've been using to the test in the real world and see how they play out there.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're doing a brilliant job, from my observation in terms of integrating, merging those worlds together. But if you were going to let your ego run wild for a second, what would it be known for?
I think really just the meditation.
Yeah.
I mean,
meditation, Dave, is kind of like how I was introduced to you by Aaron. So.
There we go, because it's the central thing in my life, and I've helped people to make much more money in the financial world. So you could say that's a form of impact with the strategy consultancy and things like that, and property investment and all those things. But to be perfectly honest, none of those things would exist without the meditation. So if anyone's going to know me for anything, it's the fact that if I was locked up alone in a room with nothing to do, I would just be meditating the same way. Yeah. And so everything else is just a backdrop to that. Like now, the Astana, we were there the other day talking, the meditation center that I've built out here. I've been thinking about doing that since I was 17 years old.
Just so people know, the Astana, Uluwatu in Bali, it's this beautiful property overlooking the cliff, overlooking the ocean, and you've basically built a facility which is your ideal kind of, I guess some people might be like it's a man cave, but it's like 5,000 square meters of man cave, which has got meditation spaces. You've got a sound dome. You've got infrared saunas, cryotherapy. It's basically, you've kind of merged this meditation, biohacking, health retreat kind of thing.
You know what the funny thing is that a lot of those modern biohacking tools are really twists on traditional methods. Like one of the other ones you've got there are flotation tanks. And John Lilly, who invented the sensory deprivation flotation tanks, was doing it to emulate the Tibetan dark retreat that they go on, where they sit in caves for months on end, where they deprive themselves of anything. Yeah. So that comes from a traditional method. Yeah. And then you've got the hot and the cold therapies, right? The hot pool, cold pool. We got the cryotherapy there. That comes from the shamanic practices of going back and forth between the hot and the cold and getting yourself into trance state. The dome, like a sweat lodge. So all these things, even though they look like the new methods, they're really just using modern technology to help people tap into the power that we've always been using when we're attempting to go into trance and psychedelic states.
So here's a question then. Why is it that modern people, I'm asking for a friend, why is it that people find it so difficult to just go, all right, well, let me just meditate? And people find things like what we're talking about, all these different, practices and technologies, they find that interesting, but they find meditation boring as fuck.
I think it's just a matter of speed. We want a quick fix, right? Like I want, if right now I could say, give me a pill and I'm going to be enlightened, or do 10, 20 years and you're going to be enlightened, most people would choose the pill.
Yeah.
The thing that experts and masters realize is that the journey is the thing that gives you the expertise.
100%.
And eventually we all come to that ourselves, even before we get to be masters. I think I was reading a book where Russell Brunson was talking about that, where he was quoting someone and saying, have you learned it or have you earned it?
Yeah.
And you can learn something. I used to read a lot of books when I was younger, and I used to listen to a lot of people talking and fill my head with different intellectual concepts. But there's a difference between that and bleeding for something.
Yeah, and that embodiment and experiencing it, the character and the resilience and the grit and all the things that kind of merge the practice at the same time is what kind of embeds it in. You can't learn something and just have it be like, yep, okay, that's it, that's dropped in.
Exactly. And when I was 17 and I dreamt of building that center and I would visualize it, I thought the benefit was getting to this life. Being here where I'm sitting there with wonderful people, communicating with them, having this beautiful space on a cliff face, but that's not the benefit at all. Now, I love the Ashtana, and I thank God for letting me live that dream and actually actualize it, so I'm not denigrating that. But that could drop off the cliff right now and it wouldn't mean a thing to me.
Yeah.
Because the benefit isn't that. The benefit is the fact that I had to become a different human being to be able to get that.
Yeah, exactly.
And so now if it did disappear and if all these companies fell away, I wouldn't care at all. I would be a happy dishwasher, sitting somewhere, just washing the dishes. And I know that if I chose to, I could build something up from there if I wanted to.
Yeah. So we'll come back to some of the stuff that you're doing now, but you've also got a very interesting story about your background, where you came from. I relate a lot, coming from very humble kind of beginnings, I guess, as a child. So yeah, tell us about that and how that led you to where you are now.
Everyone loves the sob story.
Zero to hero.
Yeah, 100%. And I really do think it is a blessing when it comes down to it. Both my parents were cult members. I was raised in a single parent family in London. There was abuse, drug addiction, violence, multiple suicide attempts, successful suicide attempts. My family was just one of those families. It was just a big jumble of pain where no one knew what to do to be able to help other people.
And that was generational. That was like...
A little bit, but mainly just our generation, maybe just the last two, like my mother's generation and the kids, my brothers and sisters. And there were things in the past coming through, but I think it's localized there. Yep. You'd have to say, you have to go more into the mystical to be able to trace it back with all of that. But whatever it was, we found ourselves in a situation, especially from 0 to 14, where we were just animals in pain. Going through everything, not knowing what to do, looking for solutions outside of ourselves. Then when I was 14, I just realized something, because I was just the same. I was blaming my family for everything, for all the problems, for not being raised right, for my brothers and sisters not being there for me, not even not being there for me.
Not having enough.
Not having enough, the government, God, everything you could imagine. And then one day I just realized they're not to blame, I am. Every single thing that's going on here, including the gang fights I'm getting into, I wouldn't be able to leave my house without getting into multiple fights a day. It would just be a given. And then coming back home, there'd be violence waiting there too. So there was no break. And this one day, I was just overwhelmed with just the anxiety of it. And I realized that not only did I have nothing to look forward to that day, there was nothing I had to look forward to my whole life. As a 14-year-old, I was sitting there. I was about to leave my door, turn the handle, go to school. And it just hit me, and it just sunk on me. There's nothing that I have to look forward to.
It seems like a pretty profound kind of insight for a 14-year-old, though, because I think at that age, really, all you really care about is being accepted into your tribe and like being part of a gang. It's like, I mean, that's a powerful kind of concept for a young person, and that can suck you in and kind of keep you there. So to have that insight is pretty profound. Do you think that came from some kind of deeper place? Like, had you had spiritual experiences before? Like, I mean, I tell this story, I think I was blessed because when I was young, I had experiences. Like, I had out of body experiences and I saw spirits and stuff. So I was always weird in some way, right? I'll say it that way.
You just learned to look normal. Well done.
Yeah. But so I guess I was blessed with that, and so I'm kind of curious, how do people get their own spiritual awakening or whatever?
So you want to take it there, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So, because there's two ways I can tell this story, and it's the practical way and the mystical way.
Yeah.
And both are true.
Yeah.
But they're different things. So, yeah, 100%. I feel blessed, and I feel that in that moment, not just in that moment, but many moments, there are moments where I faced death or I faced deep depression, and I'm not one of those people that's a fatalist, that I think it had to happen that way. It could have gone both ways, because I know what it took to bleed for it to go the other way, and it would have been easy to give up and to let it all slip away. I remember being 7 years old and having my first conscious glimpse of the mystical, and it was triggered by my mother, because my mother worked 4 jobs at the same time, a cleaner being one of them, and putting herself through university at the same time as well to look after 4 kids. And she's a soft, lovely woman, but she wasn't built for that. And so to put herself through it left a lot of marks on her. And I remember one day she brought me home a pair of trainers, sports shoes that she bought for me. And I sat there, and as she gave the box to me, I was already disappointed, because they weren't Nikes, they weren't Reeboks, they weren't Adidas. And as a 7-year-old, I was like, I can't wear those to school, because then I won't be one of the cool kids. And I remember saying to her and just looking up and saying, oh, so no Nikes? And I just saw, as I said that just dropped for her, and I just saw the tear form in her eye and the pain. And in that moment, it was like I got to step out of myself into third position and see that's love and this isn't. This is selfishness. And what she's experiencing is love, and what I am isn't. And it gave me this ability to not get through my ego, but to step aside for a second and be able to see around it.
Yeah.
And to be able to see that there's this flow of love that's existing between us all the time, and we're consistently interfering with it. A little bit like what you were saying at the beginning, I think, before we started, about the authenticity and the fact that you've just got to learn to be yourself and step in it, and then you can accept everything. And that was one of those moments that helped me to be able to give me those 2 positions, to be able to step outside of myself and see that. And I started to get glimpses of that throughout the rest of my youth. So I was a monster when I was younger, Monty, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah,
I was trouble. And so there was all of that.
These guys have heard all my stories.
There was all of that, but then I'd have moments, or I'd have glimpses where I would see the other side, and I'd get a bit of insight into wisdom. And I remember once when I was sick, and I really believe that thing that the wound is an entrance for the spirit. There was one moment where I was sick where I was vomiting for some reason. I'd just eaten some breakfast. I don't even know what it was that must have set it off, but something was going on. And so I got left at home as a young child, and I crept into my mom's bed because it was bigger. And I remember laying there, and we had those tiles on the ceiling that are made out of like styrofoam or something like that. And I remember 1 second I was just up on the ceiling with my eyes close to the styrofoam.
That's what happened with me when I was 4. I think I died from an asthma attack. That's what I assume happened. And I remember the feeling of floating up and then looking down on myself, and I can still picture it in my mind. Looking down on myself, it felt like ages, and then this massive like adrenaline rush kind of like sucked back into my body. I was 4.
And then what happened?
Yeah, I don't recall it after that, but
yeah, for me, I was there, then I was back in my body.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. It was like I was feverish at the same time as it. And then I was looking at a lampshade on my mom's table over there near her desk. And then I was right up there looking at cracks and stains that I couldn't see with my physical eyes. And later I got up to check to see if they existed.
Wow.
Because I was seeing details that I knew I couldn't see from here.
Yeah.
And then something horrible happened, Monty. I started to replay Spice Girls songs in my head while I was laying there in the bed. And I hated Spice Girls songs.
That is worse than dying.
I know, it was like torture. It was like that whole thing the US Army did with the Barney songs with the prisoners in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so I was laying there in bed realizing that we recall everything. And so I better be careful about what I listen to. Because I was laying there for like about an hour having the lyrics of the song play in my head, having all the beats play so that I could hear everything again and recall it. A song that I didn't even think I knew.
But to get that insight that you need to be mindful of what you feed your mind is very profound. It's very...
Yeah, and that's what I mean about how I think I was blessed. And I think that Einstein thing that we were talking about, the hand on a hot stove thing that condenses experience, is just true for my whole childhood. Yeah. I feel like the pain and the trauma is what took me deep enough into sensation and deep enough into experience that I had to face it. And that's what made the cracks that allows the spirit to come in.
Yeah. Just on a bit of a... We'll continue the journey, but whilst we're on that, do you think that the hardship, if you like, and the pain and the knowing you got to move yourself out of that. Did that give you like an insatiable drive, like for whatever it was that you put in life, like business or whatever it is you were taking on?
Almost.
Yeah.
It wasn't, if I'm being perfectly honest, I didn't care that much about myself. I cared a lot about myself. I was
Nobody
the
else.
opposite. I would have let it go if it wasn't for my family.
Yeah.
You know, I just had this deep love for my family. And when I was 14, that the lack of love for myself didn't become an issue. And the lack of love for myself got solved later on the journey, but not there. It was more that I was over it. Like one moment it just switched where I was afraid and I was full of anxiety and I was full of fear. And that day when I hit that point when I was 14, I felt like I had a death, a little bit like you're saying when you're 4. I got dragged down to the ground. I felt like there was this weight on me, this shadow on me. And then I felt like I literally died. And then in that moment when I died, it's what helped me to realize that if I'm going to get up and continue to live, it's going to be me that's going to build my life from this point onwards. And that's what helped me to have the realization, what the Buddha calls like the causal chain. That everything I was doing was just part of a chain of decisions I'd made anyway. So it wasn't that it was new now, it'd been happening my whole life.
Yeah.
Just now I could consciously access it. And so that allowed me to get over just a huge amount of pain in one go.
Yeah.
So then after that, I kind of felt good, if I'm being honest. Like we were still living horrible circumstances, crazy things happening, let's say for the next 7 years of my life. So the external took a while to clean up, but I felt good.
Yeah, because your perspective changed. Yeah.
And also, you know that feeling of not having the strength to move mountains, but having the strength to have mountains dumped on you and be able to get back up. And so I knew now 0 to 14 was the most pain I was going to go through. And so if that's what life had to throw at me and I could still pick myself back up, then what's the problem with any of this? Yeah, exactly.
So,
but to answer the question, sorry, a bit long-winded way, was the drive was then, how do I share this with my family? My family were in suffering. Like I said, multiple suicide attempts, people really in pain, you know, genuinely in pain and not knowing how to get out of it. At the heart of it, lovely people, caring people, but not knowing how to work through that pain. So the drive for me was, okay, I've been through a thing now. What produced the conditions that led me through this? And how can I help other people to learn the same thing?
Yeah. And you can see that today, like how that kind of resonates through your personality even and how you show up. And yeah, you can see, you can see that. So you also kind of pursued really the studies of Buddhism and lived like something like a monk for several years as well.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
I lived like a monk for 3 years, and I'm not much of a joiner. Maybe my parents, both being cult members, had the opposite effect of me. I'm more of a rebel in those kind of circumstances. But I started to be deeply obsessed with this question about how can you solve the question of suffering. And that happened when I was 14. And then I started to have more mystical experiences like you're talking about that would pop into my life. Because I was quite an intense young person, and it was very physical as well. So I do 2 to 4 hours physical training a day. Then I'll be doing my cardio as well, along with the fighting, along with the qigong, and slowly more spiritual stuff crept in. Because as you go deeper into the martial arts, you find people who are deeper into spirituality as well.
It becomes a gateway to other things.
So
when did the meditation start?
When I was 14.
Yep.
When I was 14, I started to, and you could say even younger, but there were things I was doing that I didn't realize were meditation. I would just call them intense focus, but now I know that that's a form of absorption. And I would make up phrases for myself. I would call it action philosophy, like things I would have to apply in my life. Now I realize that's mantra meditation. The conversations I was in, I would be looking for nuggets of gold with anyone I could meet who might have a shred of wisdom. And now I know that's inquiry. And so it's like this was all starting when I was younger.
That's interesting. I've got a massive relatability to that because, I mean, my thing was always pondering. And I always used to, up until not that long ago, would beat myself up for the pondering, you know, because like, I would find myself sometimes staring at the wall and like, oh, get back to work, like get back to the hustle. And then it took me a long time to realize it's like, no, it's that pondering, it's that staring at the wall, which, you know, that's what I should be embracing. They're the moments that has given me the wisdom that I need to not make me move, but make everything else move around.
100%. You become the eye of the storm as opposed to the debris.
Yes.
Do you know who Bodhidharma is?
No.
Bodhidharma is one of the monks that came over from India to train the Chinese monks and to spread Buddhism. And before he started spreading Buddhism in northern China and teaching them what became Qigong later, he sat for 9 years and stared at a cave wall. And that was the training.
Yep.
To sit there and just stare at the cave wall meditate, go deep into himself, and then he was ready to teach.
I'm so fascinated by that level of discipline, the people that do those things and for such extended periods of time is you can see how the things that we kind of grow up with, people talking about superheroes and this kind of thing, and we were talking about this the other day.
Yeah,
I think it's that. I think if monks who I've read and I've seen documentaries about the monks that put themselves in freezing conditions and they put a wet sheet over themselves,
and the Tibetan practice,
and they make themselves heat up, and then it's insane.
It becomes a competition. The day when you go up, like let's say a stage in graduation, you have to go and sit out in the cold. They get the towels and they douse them in ice water, and how many of them you can burn off and dry off becomes a status symbol within the monkish world.
Yeah, that's insane.
But we were talking about my friend the other day, and I think that's a relevant point here. A good friend of mine, Maxim Lewis, he went to prison when he was younger, and that's when he started studying Buddhism and Qigong. And he was only in there for about a year. But then when he came out, he said it would have been better if he'd had 10 years inside. Because then that meant that he would have focused on what mattered. Instead of getting distracted by all the things when you come out and not putting the time in.
Yeah.
Because how often do we focus, like with the meditation courses, this is what surprises me, like the 10-day meditation courses, how often do we focus for 10 or 12 hours on anything?
Well, 10 or 12 minutes.
Right? And think how good we would become if we just picked a thing and just focused on it like that.
Yeah, and this is what I love about the way that you live, because it's a really profound demonstration for what is possible, because we are indoctrinated into this world now, and we take it upon ourselves to hustle and grind and move so fast, and we're distracted by everything and just constantly giving ourselves distractions, and we think that we've got to move faster to make big things happen. But in fact, my greatest lesson over the last 5 years has been the more that I can sit still, the more that I can achieve. But the paradox is I no longer need to achieve anything anymore. So I don't have the attachment to it, which allows me to magnetize it to me even more, So
Exactly. Yeah, it sounds like we've had a lot of similar experiences. And for me, that came when I was sitting there after meditation one time, just realizing I don't need anything else to be happy. I always thought that I need this and this and this other thing, the next watch, the next car, whatever. And I was sitting there one day on a balcony in the middle of nowhere at this meditation center and just feeling I could sit here all day, and realizing that what was inside was more entertaining than what was outside. I've got this whole journey to go through where I can look through this internal world and dig into it. And the more that I start to perceive the deeper layers of this, the more this becomes a rich experience, as opposed to constantly being bored and needing the next thing to entertain me.
So at that time, when you had that experience or that insight, did you also know within you that it's that experience that you also want to share with other people? So in some ways, you going and doing the full-on monkhood and staring at the wall of a cave for 9 years isn't your path. Like, your path is to be a bridge in some ways for that kind of practice to people like me, to have a different experience of life, and like what I was just describing.
100%. And the reality of the matter is that the wanting to live like a monk was more like a diversion, because I'd always wanted to bring it to people, and mainly my family. It starts at home, like charity starts at home, right? And I think so does growth. And my family were just deeply in pain long after I was. And the main thing was, how can I learn something and bring it back to them in a way that's not going to seem self-righteous to them? It's like, oh, I know better than you, and you should be doing this. And that's obviously how I must have seemed to them, and how I didn't want to seem. So I wanted to be able to make it so obvious that this thing had done me good that it would resonate out to them.
It was just the example rather than trying to push something on them.
There we go. And to be honest, that's one of the main reasons why I started making money. Because my brother said to me, he was like, yeah, okay, you've had all these experiences, whatever, this or that, but what have you done physically with it? So he needed proof. He needed irrefutable proof. I don't really care about money. I live a really simple life. I could live my life with nothing. I have lived it with nothing. And now having millions doesn't make that much of a difference except for the environment that it's played out in, right? But one of the main motivators was my family would see that this was applicable in the physical world, the material world, as well as the internal world.
And what's interesting about this conversation is that, because the most, I'm going to say, spiritual people that I know, you wouldn't even know they're spiritual because they don't need to brand themselves as being spiritual. Like we have this, society kind of has this perception of spiritual either being you're a monk and you're like living on the top of a mountain and you're, doing like that, or you are living in Ubud and you're carrying a yoga mat around with you all day, and that's spiritual, the fluffy woo-woo kind of
long hair, look like Jesus.
Look at me, kind of spiritual. But actually the most spiritual people I know are just people like me and you, everyday people who, if you just met at a business conference or whatever, it's like, unless you kind of got deep in conversation, you wouldn't realize the depth of them, because they don't need to put themselves out like that.
Yeah, to me, one of the biggest things I realized along the way, and actually I realized this much younger, like we were talking about, like in bars in London, some of the most philosophical people I'd meet would be bouncers, who'd be the opposite of what you think, these big brutes who you could easily judge. And then you actually stop and spend time with them, and it's like, no, this is a deeply insightful and thoughtful human being. And also they're beyond the image. So they're willing to be authentic with you at the drop of a hat. Yeah. And to me, I feel like that's the big barrier between all of us and spirituality, is this way I'm wanting to look versus this way that I am.
Yeah.
Whereas if we just accept what we are, then to me, that's spiritual, because that's accepting the totality of life, right? To me, spirituality isn't something outside of that.
It's not a badge. It's not a...
Right?
Yeah, it's just embracing the purest depths of who you actually are.
Yeah.
And exploring that, as much as you can.
And to me, if someone does that, they can't help but be spiritual. It doesn't matter if they're following a traditional path or not. And I'm sure what you realized, because it sounds like those early stages were very similar, is that I started to figure this stuff out and think I tapped onto gold. I was like, oh, wonderful, I've got to share this with everyone. And then I started reading and looking into traditions, and I was like, oh, these guys figured it out before me. And that's what led me towards spirituality and religion and Buddhism. It's not so much the care about religion. I don't really care about that. I care about knowledge and wisdom that people have lived and actualized. And I realized that all I was doing was taking baby steps towards understanding something the Buddha completely understood.
Yeah.
And so recognizing that, meeting a greater mind and a greater personality, I realized, oh, this guy's got something to teach me.
Yeah.
I should probably shut the fuck up and listen. Excuse my language.
No, we can say fuck on this show.
Okay.
In fact, there wouldn't be a show without it. So
there we go.
So you mentioned before that you did quite well in business. Tell us about that, because this side that you're speaking about from the early years is like, that's a beautiful story, and where you're at now, you can see the relatability there. But then there's this kind of middle part where you were fully immersed in business, and yes, you still had that wisdom within you and those practices, etc. But it sounds like a very different life to what you're living now.
In reality, it's not that different. Not from the inside out. From the outside in, it looks different. But I see what you're getting at, and you want to know what happened in that period in between. When I first decided to come back, it was mainly because I was living in peace. And I told you, I went back to London. My mother was suffering quite a bit. She had cancer, and there was a bit of turmoil in my family. She'd been robbed a little bit before and had a broken jaw. Like, lovely, 5'0", middle-aged woman at the time, got robbed by this 19-year-old thug. And I went back and looked after my mom while I was living in that monkish period and spent some time with her, which was good. And then she had cancer during that period too. So it was a big year for my mom going through all this madness. And what it showed me was that the whole family, even though on the surface we'd grown out of a lot of those circumstances that troubled us, underneath it we all still had that pain and had that tension. And I realized that this thing that I was going through could fix it. And I faced a situation where my regular default state was being in peace and bliss. I was meditating for 6 to 18 hours a day, and I was flying. I wouldn't even sleep at night. I'd lay down to sleep for an hour, 2 hours a night, just to let my body rest, and I'd get back up again. I'd be up at 3 a.m, meditating, go for my walking meditation, chanting, writing my notes, had done like a couple of hours yoga before anyone was even awake. And then my mom's awake, I'd be there helping to look after her. And it started to feel a little bit selfish. And I know it's not selfish, because I know that the deeper layers you go to, the more that as you resonate that peace, it affects everything. There's this web of energy that connects us all. But on the physical layer, what did it matter if the world didn't look like it was suffering to me from that perspective, if my family still thought they were suffering. So that was a thought that kept on bringing me down, that I thought, I'm only 25. I was still young when that was happening. And I thought that if I can go this deep in meditation after a few years practice, dedicated years practice, I know I can use this to physically change the circumstances of my family. And that might not bring them out of suffering, but at least it will give them what they want from me, not what I want to give them. It's kind of like when you buy someone a birthday gift. And I was always like that with my sister, I remember in particular. I'd buy her something I wanted to give her that I thought was good. Whereas, why don't you actually just buy someone something that they want? And so what my family wanted for me was to change the physical circumstances. That's what I've been hearing since I was younger.
Yeah, which probably then gives the space to be more open to the bigger picture of what you're trying to give them.
There we go, exactly. And so I stopped resisting that. I thought, okay, let me give them that, let me do that. And for myself, it was also a challenge because I was happy with nothing. And I was the type of person who wanted nothing. So then the challenge became, could I be happy with everything? Can I be happy thrown back into the world with all the complications and having to engage with people and also having the material possessions, getting back into relationships? Is my happiness stable enough to be able to be carried into that real world situation and still not be damaged or thrown off center?
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And I guess there's a level of self-mastery in that, to some degree, that non-attachment to everything, it's a beautiful space to be in, but the world is still going on around us, and to have that greater impact, like you said, you are making a difference by, the energy that you're putting out there. But if you've got the capacity to craft some message or something that can help the world through your actions or through a business you create or through the wealth that you create, then why not? Yeah,
and I also kept on coming back to that thought of who I could connect to that other people wouldn't be able to connect to. To that 14-year-old thuggish kid, like if you'd met me then, I would have looked rough, even though I was soft inside. And who's going to reach that kid? Who's going to reach the people living in poverty that think that all of this is beyond their reach? And I thought I can, because I'm a living example of someone who's grown through that. We weren't meant to succeed. We're not what the type of person looks like who's meant to do all of that.
Yeah, and in the same way that you're saying, if you can't get through to your family, well, what chance has the rest of the world got to kind of break those barriers down?
Partially, I disagree with that because I feel like it might be easier for other people to get to your family than you because they know you, right?
But in the example of other kids that that can relate to your story, that's very powerful for them to hear a story from somebody who's gone from that extreme to a completely opposite place. It gives real hope.
Because a lot of the sob stories you hear from entrepreneurs now are the sob story of them being a low-level executive in Silicon Valley and it wasn't going well. Then they did something and it started going wonderfully well, or someone like that. And
it doesn't sound like a sob story.
That's what I mean, exactly. And I think there needs to be people who address people who've been through real trauma, real pain, forms of PTSD, whether it's abuse when they're younger or it's being a soldier or it's growing up in difficult circumstances like being in a genocide. Like these are real things that millions of people are going through around the globe. And I feel like there needs to be meditation for them. There needs to be meditation for people who really have grappled with the depths of pain and they wonder if these things can work for them as well.
So tell us about your meditation practice. You mentioned before that you were meditating at that time for 6 to 16 hours a day.
6 to 18 hours.
6 to 18 hours a day. Now, most people are going to hear that, myself included, and go, "Holy shit! Like, that's pretty extreme." Have you kind of found in all your practices? I'm assuming you haven't always done that. You've probably done times, and maybe your observation of people who are meditating for 1 hour a day, 30 minutes a day, 2 hours a day. Is there some kind of sweet spot, or is it different for different people? Is it different for different people depending on the kind of lives that they're living, or is it the same for everybody? What's your philosophy on this?
It's funny because everyone hears the 6 to 18 hours, the 18 hours in particular, and thinks, oh, that's difficult. The reality of the matter is the more you do it, the easier it is. So that time when I was doing 18 hours a day, I wasn't sitting there because I was killing myself. I was sitting there because I was in bliss.
Yeah,
and so there's nothing I wanted to do.
I kind of get that. The idea of doing something for 6 hours a day means you've got to commit to it. rather than doing something for an hour a day. It's kind of like, yeah, you could do it, or you could watch the TV, or you could check your Instagram.
And it's like a relationship. You might meet someone wonderful, but you're in a stage in your life where you're like, oh no, I just want to have a bit of fun, get in a few different short-term relationships, travel around, play the field. And then later you realize, oh, that person was amazing. And then you might meet someone who's not quite right for you, but because you commit, you turn that into a nourishing, fruitful relationship.
Yep.
And to me, it was just like that with meditation. I went in with my whole heart. When I was 23, 9 years after I started really digging into this stuff, is when that same good friend who I said went to prison, Maxim Lewis, led me to Vipassana Meditation Center. And on my first course, my first day, I understood it like that.
So that's the 10-day.
Those are the 10-day SN Goenka meditation systems. Siagi Ubakin, SN Goenka.
So that's where you're basically silent for 10 days. There's lessons, so you're hearing people talk, but there's no verbal communication with anybody. You're actually not supposed to look people in the eyes.
Yeah, you don't look people in the eyes. No non-verbal communication, no verbal communication, except for with the teacher and the manager. But even that, I didn't have much communication, because as soon as I sat and did it, I'd basically spent a year doing shadow work before that. And I'd done a lot of practice before, but a lot of different things, a mixed bag of practice, ringing bells, chanting mantras that sometimes produced a trance state, but didn't necessarily fix anything. They weren't reliable. So for the year before that, I decided to do nothing. You could call it objectless awareness. Even now I know that's a form of meditation as well. Yep. But I did it because I wanted to clean the slate, because I thought if I don't find a reliable way to reach that state in other traditions, I'm going to have to make something of myself. And then my friend Max was like, before you do that, come and do a Vipassana course. This is wonderful. It's amazing. So I went and did it reluctantly. I was like, all right, then I'll do it. Go on. I was going to do it later. I was excited about it, but I thought, let me make my own system first. But then when I went and sat on that course, I realized that what the Buddha gave us was like a modern combi oven, whereas I'd been trying to light fires with sticks. And so it was the same path, but that he just had a much more developed mind and system than me. And so it was just given to me like that.
Yeah.
And as soon as I did it, that was when I was really in pain, because that was the best kind of pain, because it was the pain that I realized didn't have a cause, in the sense that it didn't have an external cause. It was all internal. Yeah. Because by the time I was 23, I was a capable individual, traveling the world.
You'd already proven to yourself what you're capable of.
Right? I'd had successful, loving relationships. I'd healed those wounds. I had great friends. I finished top of my class in university. Already there were these things. Dun, dun, dun. Like the fighting and the physical training was very important to me when I was younger. I was a good fighter. So I just already hit a few boxes and realized none of them solved anything. Yeah. They fixed my external environment, but internally I faced the same world. I was still in chronic pain inside from the injuries. I had a twisted spine. I was an insomniac. I was emotionally still bereft. I still had all that pain inside. There was some grief I was dealing with from when I was younger that I hadn't let go of. And regardless of what I did, I could distract myself from it, but it was still just there waiting for me. Yeah. So when I sat there on that first 10-day course, I went in there looking for an answer. And when I sat down and I realized this is a technique that works directly with pain, I was like, right, give it to me. Let me feel the pain then, because if you say that that's what's going to fix this, let me go into this, let me use this, what it's meant for. And it worked.
Yeah, so that has now become your mainstay, I guess, in terms of what's led you to where you're at now. And
100%. Like once you go deep into Vipassana, you realize that actually it's the connecting dot between all the techniques, because what it basically is the science of being authentic, like what we were talking about, because it's perceiving reality as it is. So as you start to go deep into that, whatever else you're doing, it can help to power it.
But I guess in itself, just the 10-day commitment has got to be that in itself, like just immersing yourself in anything for 10 days with no distractions and not even talking to anybody. It's like you got nowhere else to go. There's nowhere to hide. So 10 days of anything, but 10 days of something as powerful as that is...
If I could give anything to anyone I loved, I think we talked about this the other day, it would be Vipassana. Yeah. Because 10 days of your life versus the rest of your life is nothing. And to me, it's the most useful thing I could give someone. If I had the choice between giving someone billions of dollars and giving them Vipassana meditation and be able to use it, I would give them that. Yep. Because I know then once they had that, they would be able to be capable and successful at anything they want to do. So to me, 10 days sounds like a lot. Yeah. But if I could take 10 days from you and give you the most important skill you would ever learn, is it a lot then?
Yeah, and I guess, for anybody listening, watching, it's kind of like, 10 days sounds like a lot because you've got to take yourself out of what is making you money right now or whatever. And it's like, it kind of feels like a distraction. But that's because, like you said before, people are looking for the quick wins. They can't see what's on the other side. People are making judgments they're making their decisions in their life based on the paradigm of them understanding what they only understand, not what they don't yet understand, right? So, taking that leap is probably, big for a lot of people.
Because they don't know what they're going to get from
exactly.
it. All right, let me give you a quick win then. Or let me give you a quick win then to do this. So I went in there not only not knowing anything about finances, but hating business and never wanting to do business in my life and thinking business people were evil. And then when I came back from living like a monk over those 3 years, I had pattern recognition skills. So I could start predicting markets, and I could become a market strategy consultant. So having never studied business, I could analyze business systems and see what was going to work and what wasn't going to work, and predict them accurately enough that I could make a commission off my predictions. And that's what made millions for my family. So you want a quick win? You want to be a successful business person? Go do a 10-day meditation course.
Yeah, and also just the commitment to the 10 days in itself is it's you backing yourself. It's you saying, no, I'm worth this. I deserve this. It's you stepping into the unknown is a commitment to yourself.
Yeah. And the teachers that taught me at the time, one thing that they said is the thing that made it work for me is how much faith I had in the technique. It's not faith in a person, not faith in a religion, the faith in the technique. And it's because as soon as I heard it, I knew, oh, this is what I've been doing, just much better. So I know this works.
Yeah.
And that's why I was wholeheartedly in it. There was no reservations about how far I should go. It's like, I'm going to use as much time as possible to learn this so it's sunken in my bones. So when I leave this center, I've got this to take with me everywhere.
So I'm curious to know, have you ever done any plant medicine? What's your take on that? And speak about the relationship between that and meditation. And
before I'd done plant medicine, I had this idea that there's one mountain and plant medicine would be like the helicopter going up there, and meditation would be like walking up there. Now that I've done a bunch of different plant medicines, I think they take you to completely different places. I think that this universe is so vast that to think that we've explored all of it and understood it is ridiculously arrogant.
So did you do plant medicine out of pure curiosity, or did you do it with the idea that you were wanting something out of it? What was your reasoning?
Curiosity.
Because
it's when I started with the idea of Yogi Lab, or formalizing the idea of Yogi Lab, I wanted to test things to see if they were different ways of getting to the same place. Because back then I didn't know if they weren't or not. To me, meditation was the main thing that had taken me in.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, I've done quite a few different, I've done ayahuasca in the jungles of Brazil, and I've done peyote, and I've done different things. And why I like it is, it's just a massive slap in the face. It's like a real okay, well, you thought you were going well, but no, here you go. And it's almost like a correcting mechanism. And it's like the more that I can correct myself, the more I seem to just get to this, like it all kind of aligns. And it just keeps reminding me, it's like the more I do those things, it reminds me that it puts me back in line with meditation and doing these things, because I can, fall off the wagon, so to speak. And I've had some very profound insights and, knowledge and stuff come through, which has been massive for, the trajectory of my life. So I'm very curious about, the reason why people do it and what they got out of it. So did you get any major insights, or what had you kind of already gotten all those insights, or?
Yeah, I would say that I've been much deeper on meditation than I've been on plant medicine. So there weren't many more insights. But two, I made some great friends. I had some amazing adventures. I saw dragons and aliens. And you could say the greatest insight I got in there was something one of the shamans said in one of the ceremonies, which was that there are many bridges towards different realities. And sometimes you can't cross those streams together. They're not compatible. And he was talking in particular, I thought, to a girl at the time who had used a lot of black magic and had to go through something like a mini exorcism, which was a crazy experience. But I think he was also talking to me, because on my deepest experience of plant medicine, the experiences themselves were wonderful, and what happened was wonderful. But then for 9 months after, I'd lost a bit of my power. And that's because I knew where the medicine was trying to plug into me. It was plugging into me right here, and I could feel it. And that's where I'd built a lot of my meditative energy.
Yep.
So then it was one or the other. You know, one socket, many plugs doesn't work. You got to pick a plug. And it took me 9 months after to clear that energy away so that my life was smooth again. Because it was like going back to when I was 14, when I could get things done, but I had to get things done by gritting my teeth and pushing, as opposed to just using that energy that had been built.
Yeah, right.
So I would never criticize anyone for attempting to use anything. At heart, I'm an experimenter, and that's what led me to meditation. And I think everyone should experiment. So I don't think my opinion is law on anything. What I would say is I'm a big believer in just giving everyone all the tools and saying, go for it.
Yeah, and what I've heard from many different people who are proficient, or not proficient, who are deep in meditation, is quite often what they say is that you should be able to reach those states without any kind of external medicine, right? Or any kind of external force or any kind of medicine. So there's probably, for my mind, the way I think about it is there's a place to get to where I would do the plant medicine. Like the last few times I've done it, I feel like I didn't feel like I had something like I wasn't going there out of some desperate healing kind of feeling. It was more like I felt called to do it, and it wasn't so much from a place of pain. It was more like I just feel called to do this, and I had very profound experiences. And I also know that me being there energetically I was supporting other people there. Like I was definitely there for a reason which was beyond me, and that's maybe why I felt called to be there. And I got healing out of it, there's no question, but it wasn't from this, like, I didn't go in there going, oh, I've got to fix myself.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You read the Bible?
No.
You know, Jesus says that my Father has many rooms in many mansions. And what he's talking about there, what a lot of people say he's talking about there, is that there are many realms to the psychedelic, many realms to the mystical. So I think there's a lot going on. And that moment I had when I was 25, when I decided to come back, the reason why it was a definitive moment is because I was going so deep into my practice that I was living a psychedelic reality.
Yeah.
So I was there looking after my mom in these tragic circumstances, but I was floating. The world to me was full of energy, and I could see things that people would think I was crazy for talking about. And I convinced myself that mystical realities were not only real, but they were there to be engaged with and played with.
Yeah.
And it was getting to the point where that was more real to me than this was to me. So then you start to realize that when you go into those states, it's not an end. Some people have this glimpse of satori or samadhi or whatever they call it within their tradition, and they suddenly think they're enlightened. Yeah. They don't realize that's a glimpse of this massive universe that is just waiting for you to go on a journey with. And if you start going on that journey, it takes a long time to get to the end.
Yeah.
It's some of the people that I've met that are deeper into the practice than me, they can do things that if I repeated on this podcast would look like I was just full of shit.
Yeah.
You know, and you start talking about them at the wrong point, you can't seem realistic to people. So I just rather leave that out. But the reality of the matter is that there's so much there that anyone...
I mean, I totally believe this idea of, you know, like people being able to walk through walls and move things, and 100%. 100%.
This can all be manipulated, you know, at a certain level. Just like I can pick up this glass and I'm a capable actor at this level.
Yep.
If you think you're enlightened and you cannot form things out of matter, then you're kidding yourself. You know, it's like there's a lot to go between here and there.
Yep.
And for me, the thing with the plant medicine isn't even so much being for or against it. It's the fact that I'm just stubborn, Monty, is a reality. And if I want to do something, I just want to do it myself. And
yeah, you also seem like a very disciplined person, and that's obviously worked for you in a lot of regards. But yeah, you can tell that there's this like really wanting to do things for yourself. I mean, you have the discipline to back that up, and you know that about yourself.
Well, now it's like I know how far it can go on my own.
Yeah.
I know all I've got to do is, it's a little bit slower, but it's also more reliable. I'm not going to go up and I'm not going to come down.
Yep.
If I sit here and I meditate for 10 hours a day and I do that consistently over a few days, then I'm going to start to approach the mystical.
Yeah.
It works. And then when I get there, I'm living there. It's not a visit. I can stay there, I can live there, I can interact there. It changes my whole life. Like, I would have loved to go to Burning Man when I was younger, but then by the time I had the resources to do it, I don't care about Burning Man. I care about burning life. And I want to turn this into a psychedelic experience, not to have to go somewhere else to have a special experience, then come back to my normal, regular, mundane experience. So to me, that's the discipline.
Yeah, that's cool, man. So back to my question before.
Sorry.
No. I think I was asking you, is there a sweet spot for people in terms of meditation? Because I assume that most people are like me. They've dabbled in meditation, or they have some kind of regular practice, but it's nowhere near the depth of yourself, obviously. Is there a recommended kind of like 1 hour a day, or what do you suggest?
The stages that I would give are 6 hours, 4 hours, and 2 hours. And I'd say anything less than that can make a difference, but it's almost counterproductive in the sense that it leads you to believe meditation is less powerful than it is.
Yeah.
So if you do 20 minutes of meditation, you're never going to get to the depths you get to if you're doing an hour or 2 hours. And so you're convincing yourself internally that it's less powerful.
Yeah.
So it makes it less worthwhile. And also if you do 2 hours, then that's going to resonate through your day.
Yeah.
You're going to have the power of that through your day, which is going to affect everything.
Yeah, and whilst we're on that, whether it be meditation, whether it be any kind of other practices, because I spend a fair bit of time each day on my, health and practices and doing different things. And once upon a time, there's no way I could have thought that I could spend that much time doing that, right? But I think it's actually, you're talking about doing 2 hours a day, and instantly people are going to go, I've got to take myself out of what I'm doing for 2 hours a day, I'm going to achieve less, right? But what happens is when you commit to that, your paradigm changes, because you then start looking for solutions. You have to make things happen in 4 hours that took you 8 hours before. So your mind starts working differently. Like you get leverage, and you start seeing the world in a different way. And like I kind of use the example, like I could probably create a business in, what might take somebody 1 year, might take me 6 weeks.
There we go.
And Richard Branson, he probably just picks up the phone, calls one of his guys, it's like, hey, make this happen, right? It's like, well, there's another level again to get to, right?
It's like the Arnold Schwarzenegger thing. Everything's repetitions. And when you've got the repetition count, you see different layers of things than other people see. 100%. I'd say, and on top of that, like this is a reality, and you have this as well, because you work with your team that you're managing too. If I give something to someone else to do, it might take them 10 hours to do it, whereas it could be a problem that I could solve in a few minutes.
Yeah.
So then if you do the training, then you can take that to your life and it cleans everything up. 6 hours, I would say, is going to take you towards the monkish. So someone who's at the point where they've got enough money to, and that doesn't mean having a lot of money, that means enough money they're happy with to be able to slow their life down. They want to focus and go deeper into their practice and discipline. I would say 6 hours, and that will inevitably take you towards the mystical.
Yep.
Basically, that's what's going to happen if you do that. 4 hours, I would say, for somebody out there who wants to be a successful entrepreneur, if you're living in dire circumstance, you need to save your family, you need to change things around, or you're already a high performer and you want to be even better, 4 hours a day. If you're somebody who just wants to be a high performer in regular environments, 2 hours a day.
Yep.
And to me, those are the stages, like 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. And then beyond that, you're going deep into the mystical.
Yep. That's cool. So those 2, 4, or 6 hours, that's when we're talking about meditation, that's what kind of state? What kind of, like, that's deep in meditation, or is that, like I was saying before, pondering and staring at the wall? There's different levels of meditation, or what is it to you?
Well, it's like Bunk says in The Wire, a man's got to have a code, right? And I think you've just got to have a way. For me, the best way that I've found is Vipassana.
Yep.
And you might think I'm biased because now I'm a Vipassana teacher and I spread Vipassana programs, but it's not that way round. It's the other way round. The reason why I'm fanatical about Vipassana is because it works.
Well, and what I'm more inclined to listen to somebody like you, because I already know you're not doing it to try to make money. It's like some people are meditation teachers because that's what they do and that's how they pay the bills.
Exactly. I spend money teaching meditation. I don't make money teaching meditation. So there are other methods that work for other people. The reason why I'd go with Vipassana is not just because it's worked for me, but because technically in the meditation world, like there's lots of techniques, but there's two types of technique. There are contemplation techniques and there are liberation techniques.
Yep.
Contemplation techniques are where you focus on a thing outside of yourself. Like let's say the most effective and well-known contemplation technique is transcendental meditation, where you focus on bija mantras, and they are things. So if you focus on those are energy signatures. They can take you out of yourself to another purer state of consciousness, let's say. A liberation technique takes you into yourself to unwind what you have condensed within you that's tied you down.
Yep.
So like all of the Chinese forms of internal alchemy and then Vipassana, these are liberation techniques. And to me, Vipassana is just the bare bones, most simple A to Z complete liberation technique. And that's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in going somewhere else.
Yeah, I've never heard it explained like that before. I mean, I've heard people talk about the different techniques and the different methodologies and the different things, but
I'm a structural person,
Yeah.
you know, so I like the structure behind a thing. And
Yep.
that's the structure when you break them down. And so for me, what do I want to do? I want to go deep into myself. If I'm unhappy, I want to find out why am I unhappy? And I want to take emotional responsibility for that. And I want to have the ability to be able to experience it fully, live through it and let it go. And then eventually that stops being, like you were talking about with your plant medicine journey, it stops being a journey into trauma. And it starts being a journey into the universe.
Yeah.
You know, the Chinese call this the small universe and this the greater universe.
Yeah.
And that's what you see when you get past the trauma and you go deep inside.
Yeah, and that's why I say my most recent experiences, actually probably the last 3 or 4, have been more where I'm just hyper aware of everything that's happening around me, and it's like I'm there to observe the room and like be support for people and hold the space for people, and it's been very very interesting. Whereas before it's like, no, I'm deep purging like shit out of myself, and yeah.
No, but I really feel that with you. I feel that you've got this feeling of someone who's just sitting and observing.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that about you.
Oh, cool. Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
No, a pleasure. And sorry, go for it.
No, so I'm curious to know what are some of your other practices and habits, because at Istana you've obviously built that for yourself and you've got all these cool gadgets up there and cool stuff. So what else are you doing daily to... do you consider yourself, do you call you, I mean, high performers would probably be the terminology people are throwing around, but is that what you consider yourself?
To be honest, I think a lot of these terms are just used for marketing, and I will use them for marketing as well.
Yeah.
But really, it's just being an effective human being.
Yeah.
And what does it really mean to be
I
an
just like the
effective
word human optimization, because it just means it's like everything together. It's like...
There we go. So to me, what does my day look like? What am I doing?
Yeah.
In the morning, I will either meditate for an extensive amount of time, or I'll get up and go to the cryotherapy straight away first thing, go for a jog, do some yoga, then meditate. It just depends whether I'm in a ponderous state and I want to sink deep into the mystical, or I want to just kickstart things.
Yeah.
Cryotherapy, if everyone doesn't know, is like a minus 110 degrees Celsius cold room. So it's just a great way to start the day, better than coffee. You jump in there and you're wired. And then going for a nice jog, just loosen up the lymphatic system. Then I can do a bit of a spa in the spa, then do the yoga to get myself ready. And then you're having like a really juicy, EC meditation because you've opened up your body, as opposed to just popping out of sleep into it.
Yep. Yeah.
Then physically, I like to power lift, just because I like to do things for a purpose. And exercise, I don't really care about body composition. I change my diet too much to really ever go into bodybuilding or do anything like that. And to be perfectly honest, I just don't care that much about the way that I look. I think it's good to look good, but it's not my focus.
I like your haircut.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Got it freshly done today just for you, Monty.
Awesome.
But so I picked powerlifting because when it comes to working out, I'm interested in strength. I just want to get strong. My goal at the moment is lifting 3 times my body weight with my deadlift. So I just want to get to there, and then I'll pick another goal after.
So is that do you think a inherent masculine kind of desire to want to lift and push heavy things?
I've met a lot of men who don't care about lifting and pushing heavy things, but
because I feel it if I don't do it, and I've had broken ribs this year. You know, for probably most of this year, I've been kind of on and off out of the gym. I've been doing a lot of mobility, which has been awesome for me because I haven't stopped any of that. So that's kind of deepened my practice on some things, which is probably why it's happened and why it's there and it's helped me. But I really miss just pumping my biceps up every now and again.
And I bet you can speak to this as well, right? Because you're a really insightful person. And this is what people don't realize about lifting something heavy. Like it seems like this masculine thing, we're doing to do that. And I think there is that urge. But I think one of the reasons there is that when you start to lift heavy, it gets psychedelic. Yeah. Like when you lift like a real heavy deadlift. I remember the first time I did 5x5 on 160 kg. You know, I was like, I did my full set, 5x5, 160 kg. It was the most I'd done at the time on reps. And I went to have dinner with my ex at the time. And for like an hour after, my body was just flushed full of energy. I just felt amazing. Like I felt the endorphins rushing through me. It was like being in one of the deep bliss states of meditation. And it becomes like this serious focused practice. Yeah. So I think there's reasons why we do these things that we're not even sure of. Then when we do them, when we break the barrier, we start to realize, oh, this is what this is for.
Well, to me also, you know, 'cause you see people in the gym and they're like talking with each other and people on their phones, and me, I'm just fully in a zone. I'm like, you can't talk to me when I'm in that hour or whatever it is. It's like my phone's on silent. I've got my timer on my phone, and it's just like I'm listening to a podcast. I'm sometimes listening to music, and I'm just in the zone. It's like, don't fuck with me.
I have a big distraction in the gym at the moment. It's my training partner, Johnny D, if you ever watch this. Because it's the same. Like if I'm in the gym on my own, it's like that as well. I used to work out in my basement before, and that was just perfect because I just put the headphones on and do it. Yeah. Whereas now I talk a little bit too much in the gym. But when the lift comes, there's that focus. And I think it's just a beautiful thing. Also, I'm a big fan of the idea that strength is just one of the ruling virtues. Yeah. Like not for men, for everyone, for men and women. My sisters did martial arts when they were younger as well. And if I ever had a daughter, I'd want her to do martial arts and to be capable to look after herself. I think that when you're strong, the world looks very different than it does when you're weak. And you don't even realize that it looks different. And so one of the best things I think you can do for anyone is just make them strong.
And I also think people underestimate the idea of self-esteem coming from those things as well. You know, just pushing through things that, you know, just reaching those little milestones and, you know, putting that in your pocket. Yeah. Just gives you that self-esteem and little snippets of self-belief. And
exactly, it's like baby steps towards self-belief. Yeah. And every day you're going in and you realize I'm a little bit stronger. Yeah. I'm a little bit better, and no one did it but me. Yeah. It teaches you
the truth. Trick is not to let your ego run away with it. And this is the battle that I've had in my head over the years a lot, is how much am I still addicted to the looking good and the needing to have muscles so that I can, you know, get attention. And I know that's still there, but I acknowledge it and I'm aware of it, right? And I never want to let it run away with itself, which I wouldn't. But I think for a lot of people, it's like, that used to be an addiction, like a massive addiction.
Well, I think a bit of it's maintenance and a bit of it's ego, right? And I think that it's important to have both. I think the maintenance, you like people who are physically attractive, right? Someone who's physically attractive has looked after themselves, not just because of how it looks. It's an attractive quality. It's someone who's taken responsibility for themselves.
Well, yeah, exactly. And it's not just about the fact that they do weights or whatever. That's not even it. It's like I really admire people that really have the discipline to look after themselves. And
me too. And the type of women that I dreamed about when I was younger are not the type of women I'm attracted to at all. What I realize now is I'm attracted to strong, disciplined women. It's as simple as that. Like if someone is not strong and disciplined and they're not capable, I just don't feel like there's someone I could be in a relationship with. So if I see someone who exhibits those qualities, to me it's just like, oh, you know, it's that sign of interest. So I feel like it's hypocritical to be attracted to people like that and then not exhibit those qualities myself.
Yeah, very true. Let's talk about Yogi Lab. So Yogi Lab is the online version of all your teachings and programs that not just you and your team are putting together. So that's meditation, and you're even doing an online Vipassana.
Yeah, there's a whole team of us creating a whole bunch of things.
And you even told me that's free.
Yeah, the online Vipassana is completely free, 100%.
I'll make sure you get the link. Get the link. Get involved, people.
Yogilab.com. Every month, the 11th to the 22nd, we run a free online 10-day retreat, 10-day Vipassana retreat. Yeah. Because that one's free because we think it's the most important skill that people can learn. So we spend money promoting that so that people would do it. This month, we had 14,000 people sign up to do it with us.
Wow.
And our goal is to get 80 million meditators meditating around the world. Because the founder of Transcendental Meditation, Maharishi Yogi, proposed this idea that if 1% of a population meditated together in a space, then it would bring down violent crime and social discontent and everything like that. And he tested it in a few areas and it worked. And even I've forgotten the guy's name, but he was the president of Mozambique. And he tested it out with his army and the populace there, and he got 1% of the population to meditate, and it had that effect on the whole country. Crazy.
Yeah,
So,
I believe that 100%. 100%. Yeah. So the other courses are yoga, and there's other things in there as well.
But 1 minute. So then if we get 80 million people to meditate, that's 1% of the world population.
Yes.
So that's the idea behind all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got breath work with Marcel Hoff, Wim Hof's brother. And he's got a bunch of different breathwork programs and meditate and hypnosis programs as well to be able to help you to approach difficult experiences, trauma, and to use breathwork in your mind to get through them. We've got nutrition. We've got loads of stuff. There's a team of people that we work with, high performance coaches, nutritional coaches, meditation, just like you're talking about, being interested in all the areas of human optimization and wanting to deliver those to people wherever they are in the world.
Yeah, that's cool. And if people get a chance to visit Istana, definitely get up there. It's a very cool place.
Come by if you're in Bali.
Very cool place. So before we close out, I've got one final question for you. Before I do that, I just want to acknowledge you for and honour you for the work that you're doing and your commitment to.
Thank you, brother.
To sharing this work with other people. You know, it's very obvious, like I said before, that this desire to want to share and teach people and pass this on and pay it forward is shining through very brightly. So it's very obvious.
Appreciate that.
And what I also acknowledge is your ability to kind of bridge these worlds together in terms of, you know, you've been successful in business and you've, you know, done all of that. And you even said to me the other day, which was, you know, kind of really resonated with me and got me thinking. Actually, it was like, you know, Istana it's your passion project. It's not your business. And in my mind, I'm thinking everything I do is a business. It's like just gave me this little nugget to ponder on. So thanks for that.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Well, for me, it's just like if you find gold, how can you not want to share it with other people? And to me, Vipassana is just that. It's like, this is the magic pill that people have been looking for.
Yeah.
That's why we don't sell it. Because if we sold it, we know that people would think, oh, they're just saying this to make money. It's like, no, we're not. This is just the thing that everyone can use to be able to transform their lives. Go and use it.
Yeah. No, that's very cool. So, I mean, we could talk all freaking day about.
Yeah, I see these guys checking the time over there, wanting to shut us down.
A lot of things. No. So, and well, I mean, we can do a round 2 and 3 in the future, and no doubt we'll have further conversations. But yeah, one final question, and that is, you know, if you had the ability to, if you had the superpower of mental telepathy, just for, you know, one time, and you could connect the message to all of humanity, and, you know, languages aside and all of that, what would that one message be?
I would take them through my experiences from when I was 14 to 25 and show them what meditation did to me. I would just sit here and I would think through my experiences for those 11 years and give them that so that they had as much faith in Vipassana as I did. So then they would know, like the Buddha says in the sutras, there is a way and this is it.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking before about plant medicine and meditation. And plant medicine plant medicine
new there.
And all those experiences and ceremonies get a lot of mixed feedback. It's subjective. It's different for different people. But I mean, with meditation, people are always saying the same thing. Like, there's nobody that tells me that meditation isn't powerful.
Yeah, it's just whether you're willing to face it or not.
Yeah,
and the thing also is, you might not have access to an ayahuasca shaman. You might not have access to someone who wants to take you to a San Pedro retreat. But you've got you. And you can sit there alone in a room and you can meditate.
But that's also why people probably resist it, because that's, in some ways, is unconsciously scary for people to sit there and be with themselves for any extended period of time, which is why we're all reaching for our phones and looking for distractions all day.
100%. Is there anything worthwhile you've done in your life that isn't a little bit scary?
Yeah. No, so, I mean, you've inspired me to take my practices to another level. So, Dave, thank you very much,
brother,
man.
Thank
Appreciate
you for having
it. Cheers. Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and see you again soon. Definitely go check out Dave, Istana, Yogi Lab. Go click on all the links. Check out the free 10-day Vipassana. I mean, how could you not? Guys, thanks so much. See you real soon.